Welcome to Know the Name, Know the Genius in You, where in a single moment you can recognize your brilliance and change your life. This is a transformational hour that covers an array of topics that demonstrate how individuals use their native talents, of course, as shown in their name, to look at the ordinary in extraordinary ways. Albert Einstein once said that everybody's a genius. Why would one of the smartest people on the planet declare that everyone is a genius unless he knew that to be true? I'm your host, Sharon Lynn Wyeth, creator of Namology Science and author of Know the Name, Know the Person. And in each weekly show, you'll hear the fascinating ways other people discovered the genius in them and what they were able to accomplish. At the end of each show, you'll hear clues on how you can recognize your own innate genius. All over the world, people have many, many diverse interests. And in that vein, people have asked about different occupations, areas of life that have highly interested them. People want to know how highly successful people have managed to achieve their genius mindset by utilizing the gifts that are seen in their name using namology science. So, how does someone express those creative talents, and how does someone share those gifts with others in such a way that everybody benefits? Our expert tonight is Alan Eisenberg, who has developed his genius in the area of helping people emotionally recover from being bullied. Alan Eisenberg is a certified life, solutions-focused, and transformational coach with a niche in self-esteem building and personal growth, particularly in the area of bullying and abuse recovery. He's also the author of 2 books, A Ladder in the Dark, his memoir, and Crossing the Line, a cautionary tale about use of bullying. Alan is also the owner of Bullying Recovery, a company that helps long-term survivors of bullying learn to overcome the long-term effects bullying and abuse, causes in their lives so that they can thrive in their life again. Welcome to Know the Name, Know the Genius in You radio show, Alan.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate that. That was a lengthy introduction to what I do, but I'm sure as we get into it, it'll be more simplified, hopefully, by what we talk about.
So I want to know what happened in your life that caused you to want to help people that have been bullied. What got you into this?
Yeah, I like to tell people, that most people who find, their passion, it comes with the cost of having the experience, and whatever that may be. And for me, of course, it was a youth of being bullied from 6 to 13, pretty much on a regular basis, and how it had changed me. And it took me, about 20 years to figure all that out. I kind of knew it. I was one of those people that's very in tune with my emotions, and so I knew that had affected me. I just didn't know how to express it or how to have that come out. So, fast forward 20 years, I'm in my mid-30s, and life is not going the way I want it to, and I still have these feelings that I've been expressing for 30 years now, and I decided to start a little website that to put them on, just to kind of write them out, because I felt like a couple things had happened, and I felt like, the kids needed to know that adults experience this. I think as most of us as parents who have been parents, like if our kids are bullied, we don't ever go, oh yeah, that happened to me too. We just kind of go, oh, that's too bad, or we fight for them within the school. But the truth is 80% of us have been bullied. That's the facts. And so I just said, I'm going to be brave. I'm going to put it out on the internet. And so in 2007, sort of about 3 years before the media really caught on, I had started a website called Bullying Stories, put my stories out there thinking that was going to be cathartic. And it was to some extent. But what I didn't see coming was all the people sending me their stories, and then the research, and then the facts that the studies were starting to be done, and that now it had a name called complex PTSD, and that's what I was experiencing. And that's what I had been experiencing for 30 years. And this little site that I was just working on from my home ended up with 1.4 million visitors. And
Oh
the
my.
town where the bullying had happened called me up and wanted me to speak, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't go back. And that's when I knew sort of I needed to get help. I needed to do my healing, which I did, and that's what I chronicled in my memoir. And then after I healed, I realized that was really the passion. The passion I wanted to do was to help others realize the same thing and not go
So,
through, hopefully, what I went through.
so how did you transform what you learned from your own recovery into becoming a certified coach to help others?
Right. And so that's what I really learned the most, is that we had to vocalize, and then we had to let go, or actually I say we accept. And so as I started studying, and I had gone through, the whole mental health gambit, and what I knew needed to happen was this idea of, okay, you're healed, you go through your healing, but how do you get back on the road of your self-esteem recovery to getting to do the things you want? And so that, that's the same point where I'm realizing my passion of wanting to help others and do this. And so I said, that's what coaching is. Ultimately, coaching has become this third tier of what is mental health support and continuation, which starts with psychiatry, then you have therapy, and then once you're done with the therapist, what I discovered is while we've had coaching around for a while, it wasn't really thought of as this next step, because a therapist gets you out of sort of your past and your future worries, right? Your past, you need to accept that, and then you need to, but no one was taking you to the next place you wanted to be. And that's what coaches do.
Does
And
forgiveness have anything to do with the healing process? Forgiveness of
so,
self and forgiveness of others?
yeah, I think the biggest lesson, is within this 30-year period that I was basically living this life of regret of this bullying and the suffering that I was going through, I was the bully. So yeah, certainly at the end of the day, forgiveness is huge. And not only forgiving the bullies, because, I've been lucky enough, because I'm out there talking about it, to have reconciled with some of them and discovered, they're just human beings and they have their own things going on. And I've had many say, I'm sorry to me. And I've said, I'm sorry to some people, because bullying isn't black and white. But the biggest person I say I'm sorry to is myself. And that's because I was beating myself up. I was the one who ultimately was allowing myself to be this person. And I think that's something we have to realize is, at some point, the scary thing isn't there anymore. And then we've absorbed that into our life. And we don't tell ourselves, I'm sorry about all this, and I'm sorry it happened, and to let go in our own lives. So I think forgiveness is a huge part of that.
So do you think that more sensitive people are the ones that are bullied or picked on first, and then some of them choose to become bullies just simply as self-defense?
I think that's you hit the nail on the head. In fact, I've more recently, as I've continued on my journey, because journeys don't end, and we take new journeys, I've discovered sort of, was doing a little bit of analysis. Why was I picked on? What is it about me? Why am I so sensitive? Because even my wife would tell you I'm sensitive. My kids would tell you I'm sensitive. And it's because I'm a highly sensitive person, which is about 20% of the people in the world are highly sensitive, which is somewhat saying you're empathic. And not empathic in reading minds, but empathic in recognizing
Sensing.
that there's things going on. People are giving off sort of, a vibe or a feel. And, it's what a lot of us call our first impression, right? You meet someone, you just go, oh, this person, and in my whole life, I've always done that and been pretty much right. But what's very interesting in studying highly sensitive people, and Elaine Aron is the expert in the field who has written books on it, so it's not things I'm making up here, is that all animals are highly sensitive. All, what we would think of as, other animals like dogs, cats, I always tell people, I'm like, it's a pretty simple story, right? You're sick, and if you have an animal like a dog or cat, you're laying in bed, you're not feeling well, and that animal will come up and put its head under your arm or do something, do anything to try to make you feel good, because it senses these things. And that's the same thing we're doing as humans in our high sensitivity. So we end up being very, people who are highly sensitive end up with a couple of telltale signs, which are really interesting.
Okay, I want you to hold that thought. I want you to hold that thought of the telltale signs. Okay. And because we need to take a break, stay tuned to Know the Name, Know the Genius in You, which can be heard on xzbn.net, an X-Zone radio station, and knowthename.com. After the break, we're going to find out what Alan's name means. Stay tuned.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone radio show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Gwilda Wiyaka's latest book, The Science of Magic, Book of Mysteries, Volume 1, is the first book in a series based on her writings that open every episode of the Science of Magic radio show. Drawing on the subject matter of each guest, and armed with over 40 years' experience in shamanism, 35 years in alternative health, and degrees in psychology and religious studies, Gwilda introduces relevant and leading-edge information that supports spiritual evolution and personal empowerment. Rich with wisdom and inspirational quotes packaged in digestible segments, this is a book that will pull you from cover to cover. It will also serve as a daily inspirational reading for years to come. The Science of Magic Book of Mysteries, Volume 1 is available at our website, tsompublications.com, amazon.com, and wherever fine books are sold. Back in Victorian England, a famous theologian posed a perplexing riddle. Why are the two top personalities in the Bible tagged with the numbers 7 and 11? Academics agree the answer is found in the stunning discovery of a hitherto secret Bible structure explained in a new book called The Genesis Grid. The discovery is so simple that preschool children could illustrate it. Certain claims are hugely controversial and may offend some, but at the X-Zone, we've studied this awesome new book and agree with one expert, and I quote, "These discoveries appear to be beyond coincidence." So who or what hid this wonderful pattern in the Bible, and what might they do next? Find out more, X-Zone Nation, and read reviews on www.genesisgrid.co.uk. That's www.genesisgrid.co.uk.
Welcome back. I'm Sharon Lynn Wyeth, and you're listening to Know the Name, Know the Genius in You, which is being heard on xzbn.net and knowthename.com. Our guest tonight is Alan Eisenberg, who assists individuals recover from having been bullied. His website is bullyingrecovery.org. And I really want to point out that it's a .org because we don't get many .orgs on this show. So it's bullyingrecovery.org. So right before the break, Alan, you were talking to us about the telltale signs.
Yeah, and so going back, you had brought up a good point, which is about our bully victims, and even maybe the bully's highly sensitive, or is there a sensitivity? So the telltale signs of being highly sensitive are interesting, like relationships with animals, which sounds weird. I'm not saying it in a weird way, but that, I've never had a bad experience with an animal. In fact, I've had some really unique experiences with animals, like, being at like SeaWorld, where they're at the dolphin pool and they're all going around, and this one stops in front of me and puts its belly up, and I'm rubbing its belly, and then of course all the people surround me and they want to do it. Or I went in a pen once with wolves, and it was 5 of us, and this one wolf starts rubbing my face really hard, and I'm like really scared. And the woman's like, "Oh, it's scenting you. It's scenting you." I'm like, "Well, what's that?" Well, it's, what wolves are pack animals, and it's putting its scent on me to say to the other wolves, "Hey, he's with me." And these are just 2 weird experiences that highly sensitive people tend to have. The other one that's a real key is music, or, the arts, but mainly music. Like when you hear a song that maybe is from your youth or something, do you get goosebumps? Or like I would go to concerts, and literally when the band walked out and there was all this emotion in the audience, I would be crying, and get goosebumps. And that there was actually an article on it now. Like, yeah, this is what happens with highly sensitive people.
See, and I wouldn't cry or get goosebumps. I'd want to get up and go dance in the aisles. My mother said she could never take me to a concert because I couldn't stay seated. I said, well, the music moves through your body, and you got to move too.
That's a different topic. I have that too. But so as I started to study this thing about high sensitivity, of course, the sensitivity also, anything with a yin has a yang, and the yang is, of course, someone says something to you, it hurts, and you show emotion. Well, that's exactly what a bully wants, right? They want a reaction. So if you're not being bullied because of your race, your religion, your creed, or some other reason, then there's the sensitive kids, right? The kids who are going to react. Because there's interesting studies about kids who are called natural negotiators. And while they may get bullied, they don't have any problem with it. So all these interesting studies are coming out. And the one that piqued my interest the most was this high sensitivity, because it didn't go away. It doesn't go away. My wife will say something to me, and it'll still affect me emotionally. If I'm in a crowded room, I'm overwhelmed. All the other things that go with being highly sensitive. So what is interesting, and you mentioned, that falls on the bullies too. The interesting thing about bullies and the bullying victims is that they're not that far apart. Down the line, they have the same characteristics until you get to like one point, and that's in sort of that abuse at home and that overpowering or some other troubles that they have. But self-esteem, the bullies don't have any self-esteem. That's why they're bullying. These other things, they're all tied together. And I think that's what I've learned now in talking to some of my childhood bullies, is that they were really dealing with a lot of stuff themselves. And they don't remember anything they did to me. Not a one of them.
How discouraging, right? So,
well, it is to me, because, of course, in my mind, they were these monsters. But to them, they were dealing with stuff at home. They were dealing with, drug abuse
and then it just
alcohol.
acts out. I know from all of my years in that classroom, I felt it was very obvious to see who was having problems at home. And your heart.
And that's what I always say.
Kids. Okay.
I say this all the time. It's really interesting, which is, what if we took an emotional attendance at school as we take a physical attendance?
That would be really interesting. I mean, and unfortunately, in our classrooms, if we're being observed at all, and you're allowing a child to sleep or you're allowing a child not to be participating, the teacher gets written up for that. But sometimes that child needs to have a timeout because they need it for themselves, and the teacher's being gracious to say, "I recognize that you need alone time or private time, and let me give it to you the best way I know how." And
another interesting thing that just came up, which was this one, of course, I end up having to read a lot about the suicides of young people today, which now young people can express through social media that they're doing this because of bullying. This one case where there were these little incidents on the bus in different classes, but none of the teachers, none of the bus driver didn't report it because they were little incidents,
Yeah, but those little guys
all these
add
little
up.
incidents made a big thing, but everybody that saw them just thought they were just these little things.
I want to come back to that on suicide just because when I went into administration and then got promoted into central office, I was in charge of counselors for the district, and that's one of the things we had to deal with. But I want to get to your name because this is our part of our program where we get to do that. So
Cool.
May I proceed and interpret your name?
Sure.
Okay. So Alan's name indicates that he's a workaholic, but he can be quite the couch potato when he wants to be. It's like one extreme or the other. And once he's down for the count, it's like, no, he's not getting up. Okay. He's here to make the world a better place. So if you lend him something, it'll come back in better shape than when you gave it to him. Okay. And the combinations in his last name indicate that it was being around his family that caused him to be sensitive and very much aware of how other people felt. And his family also gave him cause for him to want to be included and not to be left out. So when I say that that's caused by family, it means that it was either so apparent or it was so absent. So one extreme or the other would cause a child to say, oh, this is necessary in my life. Okay. And your name is interesting because it says you were born with self-confidence and then you lost it and you had to regain it. And we'll discuss how that shows up in your name at the end of the show, so that if anybody else has that in their name, they'll know that that's what happens. Alan, your name also indicates that you were taught as a child that you needed to be able to learn from others and that an education was important. And you have a fabulous memory, by the way, and you're highly skilled in the organizational department. So it's easy for others to follow your organizational style, okay, and your methodologies. So that's some of what your name says.
That's some scary stuff. Okay, that's like, that's fortune teller type stuff.
It's just patterns.
The first thing that came out of your mouth is, led me to the next thing I was going to say is, not only have I just discovered that I'm highly sensitive, but I'm also trying to, there's a movement that I feel needs to happen, which is ditching the label. And what do I mean by that? I'm an introverted extrovert. So this is the new thing, and that's a real thing. Again, you can look it up, see the studies on it. So I'm an introverted. Everyone thinks I'm extroverted, but I need my quiet time. I need my couch potato time. So while I do love to work hard, then I have to take a break. Like if I go give a speech in front of people about bullying, then I'm going to go sit in a room by myself for a while. I don't. And again, that was another interesting thing that I'm like, how can I be like this? Everyone thinks I'm extroverted, but I don't feel that way. And it's because, the label is wrong.
Well, your name also says that you help keep the bookstores in business because you're reading a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And anyway, names give us so much information. What's interesting about your name is it says you don't have to be the one in charge, but you need to work for somebody who's competent, because if not, you'll take over because the job has to get done. I mean, there's and that you self-sacrifice for the good of others. That's also in there.
Yeah.
But
martyrdom. Yeah, I love being a martyr. But also I'm really known as a loyal lieutenant. I don't want to be the leader, but I love being the loyal lieutenant, the second in charge.
Yes,
And
that
because
is
they're
so.
the ones who do everything. The person in charge is just kind of overseeing everything, but the other person actually works with the people, and that's what I like to do. The lieutenant's the actual, if you think about it in military terms, they're the ones with the people on the ground talking to them and
Yeah,
helping
that
them
shows
out.
up in your first vowel of an A, by the way. Everybody who has a first vowel of an A are the ones that are the worker bees behind the throne.
Yeah,
They're the ones that get everything done.
And the family stuff. I mean, I actually, to write my memoir, I had to confront my mother, which I come from a Jewish family, so that's not always very easy to confront your mother. And because she had created perfectionist mentalities out of her daughter and I.
Okay, you got to hold on. Hold that thought for us. Okay, we need to take another break. Stay tuned to Know the Name, Know the Genius in You. You're listening to xzbn.net, an X-Zone radio station. This show's dedicated to recovering from being bullied. After the break, we're going to find out having been bullied can affect a person's life for years to come. Stay tuned.
From our broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to the world and beyond, you're watching the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
AVS Media Den.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
Welcome back. I'm Sharon Lynn Wyeth, and you're listening to Know the Name, Know the Genius in You, which is being heard on xzbn.net and knowthename.com. Our guest tonight is Alan Eisenberg, who assists individuals recovering from having been bullied. His website is bullyingrecovery.org. Again, that's bullying, so it's BULLYING, recovery, RECOVERY.org. So it's important to remember it's a .org, not a .com. Okay, right before the break, you were telling us that you finally confronted your mom, and it caused me to think about when one of my friends was leaving her house as I was coming in to see her. I'd been out of town, and she was so pleased with herself. She had this huge smirk on her face, and I said, wow, you must have just done something wonderful. And she said, can you believe it? I'm 49, and I finally stood up to my mother. And she goes, can you believe it? It took me 49 years. And my reaction was, well, thank God it didn't take you 50. So
it almost took me as long, but not quite.
Yeah, so you had that same thing. You finally got to stand up to your mom. And I think there's a lot of houses or a lot of households based on different reasons that where the parent's very dominant or very domineering, where it does take a lot of courage to stand up to a parent because you've had the repercussions your whole life. You know, so that's always a great thing. Okay, so I want to go on with all these questions I want to ask. So, Ellen, what are the worst cases of bullying? Do they occur at home or do they occur at school?
I really, I think they can, right now, we're seeing cases at home. I'm studying cases at school, and I'm studying cases in family. Familial bullying is becoming a huge topic now and being studied. So your last comment is very real. When we talk about confronting family, I know people that haven't talked to their family in 40 years, because they were bullied by their family. So here's the way I see it. I focus on youth because that's what I experienced. And I know a lot of, now I know a lot of colleagues in the world. Some study, some focus on workplace, some focus on familial. But the reason that I focus on youth is because I think that the early intervention is what is missing. And it's really about the holistic solution. What we have a problem now is that schools are really on a check the box mentality. They're being told that bullying's a problem. It's very public out there, and they have a little bit of budget to bring a speaker in to talk about bullying. And I know at my school or my kid's school, it was like the be cool dude guy. Be cool to everybody, dude. That's not the solution.
I look at that from maybe a different point of view, simply because I've had 40 years in the educational system, and I look at that as a teacher these days is a parent, is a counselor, is a teacher, they have to play so many different roles. And then sometimes their own, and it's getting more and more in different schools, their own paycheck and whether they get a bonus or not is totally dependent on how well those kids test. So more and more, they're teaching to the test instead of teaching rational thinking or deductive thinking or whatever, because they have to get these kids to test well, because that's what gets reported to the public and whether they think that school's doing a good job or not. And when
and then we have the pressure, then that's creating the pressure on the kids that wasn't there before as well.
Correct.
When I went to school, there weren't all these tests, there weren't SOLs and all of these things you had to get through, and then there's this expectation. I live in affluent Washington D.C., and every kid's supposed to go to college. Well, the truth of the matter is, in the country, 40% of kids go to college.
Well, but the truth is that too many kids go to college, if you want to look at it, because then they can't get the jobs that are supposed to pay them high enough that they can pay back those bills from college, and they end up being in debt for so much of their life. And you can go to a vocational school and come out and earn a lot more money than you can unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer.
And
You know,
and there are jobs that need to
engineer.
be filled that are not the jobs that need the 4 years. So one of my sons is an EMT in an emergency room at the hospital. He saves lives every day, you know. And what if he wasn't around? what if
Yeah.
you know, he went to a 2-year school, got his vocational in EMT. He's going to go back and become a nurse, but you know, that's the path he took, and we need him.
Yeah,
He saves
and
lives.
the very first time I was hired as an administrator was at a public high school that had a vocational section, and I loved it. And I thought, what's wrong with the rest of these high schools and all these schools? But that's a whole nother conversation. I want to know, when you're working with people, what kind of bullying have you found to be the hardest from which to recover?
So again, I think it's really the youth side of it, because I think a lot of the other ones, like a workplace bullying, is a continuation of bullying usually from a youth, because we know that the percentage of youth being bullied is statistically outrageous, and then the damage that comes from it. So what, again, you know, where I focus, and it's not that I'm putting down you know, these speakers who come in to talk about anti-bullying or bystander awareness or all these things, is that's only half the holistic solution. And unfortunately, the other half is when someone is victimized, that how they are then getting treated afterward. What is happening in the school, and even though you talk about it being overwhelming, it becomes really critical that that moment, you know, if I was a young kid and I come to someone and I say I'm being bullied, that it's handled correctly. And that may mean, you know, that it's handled outside of the school, because the school may not be equipped to handle it, and that's okay.
Well, there's a lot of programs now that are going into different schools that are attempting to teach children how to stand up for other children and the effects of bullying. And that even if you want to bully, what that means is going on in your life, and to come get counseling help. I think what sometimes is missing is time for compassion, even though the majority of teachers are in that field because they're very compassionate people, with all the pressures being put on them. The other thing that I have seen as being both an administrator and a teacher over the years is that if a child sometimes wants to get another child in trouble, they will come and report that kid was bullying them when it didn't happen. And so
I mean,
there's you know, and so adults are being put in a place of, we always respond with a report, and it's really sad when a child makes it up.
Well, and this is, you know, not wanting to get too far down the rabbit hole on the Me Too movement. It's the same problem we're seeing a little bit. I always equate the victimization and the re-victimization of youth who are bullied, which we've seen a lot of, and I experienced a lot of, as the same thing. So, you know, I talk about it from like a rape point of view. If I'm a college age student, I'm not women. We know they're not reporting rape. Why aren't they reporting rape? Well, because they were, you know, at a fraternity party, drinking in a short skirt, and they were flirting with a guy, and all that's going to come out, and they're going to, you know, look bad. And I can't tell you how many times I was told, you know, why don't you just change so that the bullies don't affect you?
You know, that doesn't happen. I mean, I've been in work situations where supervisors have attempted to bully me, like a principal would bully the teachers. And I grew up in a very well-to-do school where there were so many bullies that my oldest sister would come practice with me in the bathroom on, what do you do if you're bullied this way? And what do you do if you're bullied that way? And if this happens, what do you do? And my mother used to say, why can't you two girls get along? And she didn't realize that my sister was practicing with me so that I would have automatic responses not to get bullied. And I thought everybody needs to go through that training. But how many adults are bullied at work, and what can they do if they're desperate for that job?
So that's the critical thing that you're saying, is the desperate for the job. So when we get to adults bullied at work, the percentages are still being studied a little bit. We're seeing about 30, somewhere around 30%. But the problem is that it's the job, and you have to have the salary. At the point that you're working, let's say, I've been working, and now I live this lifestyle. I have a house, I have 2 kids, I have this, and now I need to bring a paycheck home. Well, that's a different pressure than the youth were feeling, right? And that's a very stuck place. So actually, going back to suicidality, the highest levels of suicide are actually in the middle age range. The only reason we hear so much about youth suicide is because, from a percentage standpoint, youth don't die of other things so much. So it's a higher percentage. But the highest percentage of suicidality is actually in the middle age, is the 35 to about 45 age range.
That is really scary. And I think different cultures have different rates of suicide. I know that when I was teaching in Japan, the number of children that committed suicide was just astounding to me. Okay, we need to take our last break. Stay tuned to Know the Name, Know the Genius in You on xzbn.net, an X-Zone radio station, and knowthename.com. After the break, we're going to find out what Alan Eisenberg has in his name that has assisted him that you just might have in your name as well.
Named one of the world's greatest psychics, Elizabeth Joyce is now giving readings worldwide via Skype. Elizabeth Joyce is recognized for her clairvoyant ability to help find missing persons, her analysis of dreams, past life regression work, mediumship, and her accurate predictions. Elizabeth has been a frequent guest on the X-Zone radio show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, now for several years. For an appointment with Elizabeth Joyce, call 201-934-8986 or Skype at elizabeth.joyce. And for more information, you can always visit Elizabeth Joyce online at www.new-visions.com. The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Wayne Morin Jr. and Thomas Lee Howe will expose widespread and systematic deficiencies in this thought-provoking tell-all novel. Mind control rages among scholars in law schools. Human rights are ignored while thought reform and mental manipulation are accepted practices used as behavior modification. Dr. Louis Jolyon West comes to mind. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness expose novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades, there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com.
I'm William S. Peckham. If you enjoy a good mystery with a touch of the paranormal, then you'll love my novel, From Out of the Woodwork. It's the story of a young Toronto contractor, Sean Kennedy, who buys derelict homes, guts them, and turns them into multifamily dwellings. Slums just waiting to happen. When Sean buys 29 Livery Lane, the house fights back. Former owners unexpectedly come out of the woodwork as he starts the destruction. The apparitions come to him when he touches old books, reads hidden letters, rummages through old boxes, finds a locket, or reads a discovered manuscript of a murder mystery. From Out of the Woodwork will take you from 1899 to the horror of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001. Check out From Out of the Woodwork on my website, www.williamspeckham.com.
Welcome back. I'm Sharon Lynn Wyeth, and you're listening to Know the Name, Know the Genius in You, which is being heard on xzbn.net and knowthename.com. Our guest tonight is Alan Eisenberg, who assists individuals recovering after they've been bullied. His website is bullyingrecovery.org. Now, Alan's taken his skills to a level where he's able to successfully assist others in recovering from having been bullied, which is such a needed thing in today's world. Alan, you wrote a book, A Ladder in the Dark. Tell us about that book and what was your goal in writing it? What did you want to accomplish? What did you want to share? Why did you write it?
Well, it had been a book I was working on in my mind for a while, but I always said I had 2 acts of a 3-act book, and the last act was recovery. And I didn't have that until actually I was about 42, which is only about 5-6 years ago. So I really wanted people to hear the story and go through my experience to understand that there is a path out. So that was sort of my point. Now, everybody's path is a little different, but I wanted to make sure I told the story of what happened to me, the after effects of it, and then how I came through a recovery program to recover from it.
Do you think a lot of people that are bullied at home are then emit something in their auric field or their behavior or whatever you want to, in their energy, that somehow then those same kids are the ones that are bullied at school or become the bullies at school?
Mostly they become the bullies at school, and this has been studied, that the two biggest influences of a child becoming a bully are that they are abused at home or ignored at home. So it's polar opposites, but it's the same effect, that they're longing for attention that they're not getting at home, or they're getting the wrong attention. So they typically are the ones who will fall into the bully range.
In your A Ladder in the Dark, how is that book different from other books that address the topic of bullying?
Well, what I had found was, and I had read a lot, as you said, I'm a reader, so I had read a lot of other people's books, and a lot of them are about, I was bullied and it sucks. And I knew that's not what I wanted to do. And so I wanted to tell, like I said, the third act, that there is a recovery and that it does cause damage, long-term damage, and that, ultimately that has to be dealt with. And it's a personal journey that everybody who deals with the after effects, what's now known as complex PTSD, are going to have to figure out how to go through and get out the other side so that they can live the life that they want to live.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, literally when a child is being bullied, it literally can affect them their entire life.
Oh yeah, there's people there's people in studies who haven't left their house, full of anxiety, full of fear. People don't get married, they don't have friends, they fear crowds, they fear people. And everything that you know about PTSD is what happens in the world of bullying and abuse victims. So people who are sensitive to that, like myself, we're dealing with the ramifications of what happened to them as youth if they don't get help, it could be the rest of their lives.
Oh, that is so sad. So your other book is Crossing the Line. So talk to us about that book.
So this one was my fictional story, and it is, I write on it, it's a cautionary tale, and it really is meant for the teen audience and older. And it's really about the extremes. What I see are the 2 extremes of bullying. One is, it leads to suicide, and the other one that's less talked about is it leads to bullying victims bringing weapons to school and sometimes using those weapons. And I always say it's a very thin line, which choice gets made. So I wanted to write a book based on research and based on true fact stories that looked at both sides, looked at it's a 4-character story. Every chapter is another piece of the character story. Of course, they all come together, but one of them is going to go into a school and with a gun and use it, and the other one is going, to go down the suicide side of it. And it's really about how all that played out, why it played out, and this is what it can lead to. These are the ultimate damages that can happen to bullying victims.
Now, I want to say I have been in education for 40 years as an administrator and a teacher, and I have dealt with a child shooting another child right as I exited my office into the hallway. So it was right there. Mm-hmm. And having to deal with that, and a teacher committing suicide, which then, of course, it was very popular, set off the school and what we had to do. And I look at what our schools are handling today, and it's just a crazy amount of things. And it's interesting that if we could just catch bullying early and meet the needs of those children, then maybe a lot of this other stuff would be reduced or wouldn't happen.
And that's really, I think that's really what I'm saying is I did the other part I studied was sociology. So I always think of societal things and how this is really what we're talking about is a societal thing. When a kid goes into a school with a gun and kills one or several other children due to bullying, that affects more than just that kid who was bullied. The suicide does too. We know that.
Right. It affects everybody.
Kids. Yeah. I mean, it damages the school. At my old alma mater in 1 year, 3 kids committed suicide, all due to some form of bullying. I mean, that school, had to deal with a lot that year.
And, we lose kids anyway.
Mm-hmm.
When I've been teaching school about every other year, we will lose a child for death other than suicide. And so it's difficult for all the children to deal with it when something like that happens with a child. Okay, I want to keep going. You have a daily online paper that's titled The Bullying Recovery Times. So what does that cover, and how do people subscribe if they want to receive your online paper?
Well, all of it is on my website. The Bullying Recovery Times is actually a aggregated paper, almost like going to Yahoo News, that looks at the 2 major subjects that it covers is bullying stories going on and anxiety, because I think they go hand in hand. And so what the paper does, I don't really come up and research the stories. It goes out and finds them. Like I said, it's an aggregator like Yahoo News or anything, and it presents those stories in paper form, like a newspaper type form. And so people can go on my website and go to my site that's called the Bullying Recovery Times and read it.
Okay. Now talk to us really briefly about your bi-monthly podcast.
So for the podcast, I do 2 things. One, I have a weekly blog on a subject around bullying. And then the podcast is really about Healthy You. It's called Healthy You, which is my coaching program. And it's really, while it does have bullying subjects, it's more about trying to start to live a healthier life. Finding that small changes in your life, or sometimes big changes, can make you healthier, can help make you live a better life. And really, my life had to take a 180 turn in order for me to get better. But now, with all that in mind, most of my guests come in and we talk about subjects about how to overcome maybe some of the things that are limiting you from living a healthier life, or techniques to start adapting, whether it's mindfulness. I'm a really big mindfulness person, and healthy eating, how that affects what you put in your gut, how that affects the release of chemicals, all of these subjects that I don't think we talk about enough. Empathy, another big one I like to talk about, and really what all that means in the world of health, and how you can be healthier, how you can help yourself.
In 30 seconds or less, what would you like? How would you summarize what you'd like everybody that's listening to this podcast to take away from your interview?
I think the big thing is that it isn't kids being kids. It isn't something that people get over. Those are old schools of thought, and that what we know now, what we've learned since the studies started happening in 2010, and there are great amounts of studies out there, is that there is long-term damage from bullying that people grow up with, as we discussed, could be the rest of their lives if they don't get help. And that's why I do what I do, is to try to get that out there and help as many people as I can to get past.
I want to thank you for coming on the show and sharing all of your knowledge and providing a resource for people to be able to go to. Thank you so much, Alan. Okay, guys, you want to be prepared and surprised and very pleased when you experience Alan Eisenberg's work. His website, again, is www.bullyingrecovery.org. Alan was born with self-confidence, lost it along the way, and then had to regain it. Being born with self-confidence and then losing it is represented by the letter combinations of L-A, right next to each other, first an L, then an A. When a person regains their self-confidence, it's shown by the following letters, whether they'll do it or not. If you have an L-A combination in that order, because reversing the letter combinations changes the meanings, then you too may need to regain your self-confidence somewhere along the way after you've lost it. Do you know where your genius lies? I'm Sharon Lynn Wyeth, host of the radio show Know the Name, Know the Genius in You, which can be heard every weekday at various hours right here on xzbn.net radio, an X-Zone radio station, and on knowthename.com. Tune in to hear the fascinating ways other people have discovered the genius in themselves and what they were able to accomplish. If you wish to know more on how to read a person's name, please visit knowthename.com, and you can schedule an appointment with me, your host, by visiting knowthename.com. This is Sharon Lynn Wyeth, signing off.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Are you or is someone you know struggling with addictions, depression, anxiety, relationships, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, grief, success, and prosperity? Do you know that your subconscious belief plays a big role in the outcome of your hard work? We can help you permanently change the beliefs that may be the reason for your struggles and failures. We care about getting you the return on your investment and the results you are looking for. We can help you be free of the limitations of your past and in realizing your highest potential. We work with people by phone and Skype. For more information, visit us at www.ritasoman.com. That's www.ritasoman.com. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com, or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464.